was born in Golden, Colorado. It was an accident. My mom and dad did not plan to have me. My father at the time was paralyzed from the neck down, and my mom had 3 growing boys. In the 60s, abortion wasn't readily available at the time, but a lot of women would try household remedies. She tried those twice. As you can see, it didn't work. Obviously, somebody else had different plans in mind. I was abused from the time I was 4. I don't know how to say it other than she didn't want me, and she made that very well known. Around the time I was 8 years old, my grandparents from California started visiting. My grandfather, my dad's stepfather, decided that he liked younger girls, and he began sexually abusing me. And it didn't matter how hard I tried to hide. He always managed to find me alone. And that continued until I was 16. I tried to tell my mom once, and she told me that she would take care of it. But it continued for another 4 years. My head was a complete mess. And I had gotten into a fight with my mother. She told me I would never amount to anything and that I wasn't good enough. I found the handgun that she had hidden in the bedroom. I loaded it, walked out into the garage, and said, "This is enough. I'm not going to be a loser. If I can pull this trigger, I win." But I couldn't do it. I tried 3 other times that week. And at that point in time, I said, you know what? I might as well prove them right. My dad, being paralyzed, the nerves were not damaged when he was in his car accident. So he still had full feeling. That meant that he was on several pain medications. So I thought, I'm in pain. Why not give it a try? I started just taking, 1 or 2 here or there. I developed a new group of friends. They introduced me to marijuana, alcohol, acid, LSD. Pretty soon those weren't enough. So I graduated to crystal meth, cocaine, heroin. I never used a needle with heroin. I smoked it. It had the same effect. To support my habit, I was an absolutely incredible thief. This continued for probably 3 years. During that time frame, my mom and dad divorced, and my mom remarried. She chose to move me to North Carolina with her new husband, who was also abusive. And I was there maybe a year when we got into a fight. He broke my nose and separated my shoulder. If I stayed there, one of us would kill the other. So I started calling my grandmother, my mom's mom, to see if I could come live with her. She did her best to nurse me back to health. The physical part of that was easy, but she wanted more for me. She wanted to introduce me to God. I wasn't interested, but she wouldn't stop. Up to this point, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know, that there was anything else out there. And if there was, how could he let me go through that? When my father died a month before my 18th birthday, she knew at that point in time that I was in trouble. My drug usage was out of control. I had no interest in going to college, no money if I wanted to. She knew that she had to do something drastic. And she said, "You have 2 options. You can join the military, or you can go to church with me." I decided to join the Air Force. I was so angry that, that she made me make this choice, that I was bound and determined I wasn't going to fail. The military's pretty simple, no drugs. So I went through withdrawals, through basic training. I had a drill instructor that knew what I was going through, and she walked me through it. That was probably the worst 6 weeks of my life. Germany was my first station, and there all forms of religion are available. And I discovered witchcraft and Druidism, and it absolutely fascinated me. And everything made sense. Everything revolves around nature, there is no God. This had to be what I was meant for. While I was in Germany, I met the absolute love of my life. In my eyes, he only had one flaw. He believed in God. I thought, as much as I care for him, I can overlook that. He started out as my card-playing partner, became my best friend, and on January 29th, 1991, he gave me the pleasure of becoming my husband. We got sent back to the United States in 1992. My grandmother, she couldn't call when we were overseas because it was too expensive. But now that I was closer, she could call long distance. And God was always the topic. So I thought, okay, all right, Grandma, I'll give it a try. I went from church to church, Catholic, Protestant, didn't matter. It didn't make sense. And then a few years later, in 1996, I got a call from my mom. My grandmother had a heart attack after back surgery, and she didn't survive. At that point in time, I knew that I couldn't give her the one thing she wanted. She wanted me to know and understand God, but I couldn't give it to her because I didn't understand. So I began to think, maybe my mom's right. Maybe I am a loser. A few years later, my husband and I moved back to Colorado. And my Aunt Peggy was sitting there one night, and it was a Saturday night. She said, why don't you go to church with us? I didn't want to go, but, why not? And this man, Peter Hyatt, he stepped up to the microphone, and he was talking about our inability to buy God's love. I can't even really explain it, it just hit me. God is real. He does exist. This is where I belong. I finally found a place that makes sense. After my husband's grandfather passed away, he decided he wanted to move home. We had spent 10 years with my family, and it was his turn. So in 2007, we came to Brighton. Now, Bob's family goes to the Brighton Nazarene Church. So I thought, okay. Pastor Ben Walls steps up. He's got a completely different preaching style than Peter Hyatt, but he made sense, and he was honest. I didn't realize that I was still broken inside, that there was still something missing. Then a year later, Pastor Ben gets up there, and he made a statement that literally turned my world upside down. He said, what is God whispering to you? I had no clue what that meant, but it stuck in my head. And a few weeks later, Pastor Tim and Deb Winters stand up before service, and they start talking about a mission trip. They need chaperones and kids. I can't even tell you what Pastor Ben preached that day, because in the back of my head, all I could hear was, you're going to go, right? Sign up. You know you want to do this. Give in just one time. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. I can always change my mind. And then I get a call, do I still want to go? The yes came out before I even knew what was happening. We're driving down there, and the kids are talking and they're telling their stories, and the other chaperones talking about their stories, their walks with God and their talks with God, and I'm just sitting here going, oh no, I am in way over my head. God's whispered to me once. I'm just going to hold him back. I'm going to stand on the sidelines and just, stand in the back. Needless to say, God had other plans. He pushed me in ways that I've never been pushed. Pastor Tim had a very simple rule. The kids don't do anything that a chaperone won't. So if I was going to expect them to knock on a door, I had to knock on a door myself. If I wanted them to talk to somebody who was dying, then I had to do it. Before I knew it, I'm talking to people about God. I'm not ashamed of it. And then the last day, I was sitting at the table waiting. There was this loud voice in the back of my head. I've never heard anything like it before. And all he said was, "This is what you're missing." And I mean, you could see it. It was just, this veil just dropped in front of me. And I could see all these kids that I had gotten to know and love over the last week. They were hugging and they were talking about God. But once again, I was on the sidelines. God asked me, he said, "Do you want to be a part of this?" I said, "Absolutely." Well, what do I have to do? He said, "You have to give me something." Okay, what? Everything. How do I do that? Well, as it turns out, Deb had gotten some information from some people there on the steps to forgiveness. I'm sitting there looking at these lists of, things that you have to forgive, and how can I expect God to forgive me for all of this? I haven't lived the best life. Not only that, but how am I supposed to forgive all these people that have done all of these things to me? Then up steps Deb. I absolutely love her. She talked with me. She prayed with me. She literally walked me through this. But more than anything, she never let me give up. She never let me give in. Before I knew it, I was able to let all of it go. I knew that I could let it go, that I can be forgiven. That was probably the most amazing day of my life, followed very closely by being baptized by Pastor Tim on October 8th. That's the one day that I can say, my name might be Lisa Christine Pelcher, but I am a child of God, and I belong to Him. And I'm ready to tell the world that.